Colonel Amelia Reeves stood motionless on the Pentagon's roof, watching the colossal holographic insectoid hovering above Washington, D.C. Similar projections loomed over every major city worldwide. The military had already tried everything. Missiles passed through the images. EMP bursts did nothing. This wasn't a physical invasion. It was a demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. Her secure phone vibrated. "Colonel, POTUS is requesting your presence in the Situation Room." 20 minutes later, she stood before a table of ashen-faced leaders. The president looked like he'd aged a decade in hours. "They've neutralized our Mars colony," the Secretary of Defense announced, projecting footage of the research outpost dissolving under a wave of iridescent energy. 63 personnel, gone in seconds. "They call themselves the Galactic Hegemony," the Director of National Intelligence continued. "Intelligence suggests they've been observing us for centuries. Every major power has received identical ultimatums." A scientist Reeves didn't recognize spoke up. "Their technology operates on principles we barely comprehend. Preliminary analysis suggests they've mastered quantum manipulation at scales we considered theoretically impossible." The president rubbed his temples. "Options? We have none, sir," Admiral Chen replied flatly. "Our most advanced weapons would be like throwing rocks at a stealth bomber. If we refuse their terms, projections indicate 87% global casualties within the first hour." Outside the White House, crowds had gathered, some protesting, others praying. News channels broadcast continuous coverage of the alien ultimatum. Religious leaders called it the apocalypse. Tech billionaires offered their fortunes to anyone who could communicate with the aliens. Stock markets worldwide had suspended trading after catastrophic crashes. In her apartment that night, Reeves studied the hegemony's guided development protocols they transmitted. The language was clinically precise. Humans would maintain cultural continuity while being neurocognitively adjusted to eliminate evolutionary maladaptations like aggression and individualistic thinking. Reproduction would be optimized and regulated. The document spoke of species maturation over approximately 200 years, after which humans might be considered for limited association status. Her phone rang. Her sister in Nebraska. "Amy, what's happening?" "The kids are terrified. Those things in the sky." "Stay calm, Kate. Follow emergency protocols. Stock supplies, but don't panic. The neighbors are saying we should fight back. That surrendering would be. They have technology that makes nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. Kate, fighting isn't an option." After hanging up, Reeves accessed her classified terminal. Reports flooded in from around the world. Riots in Lagos, mass suicides in Tokyo, armed militias attacking government buildings in dozens of countries. A Russian nuclear submarine had gone silent, possibly attempting a rogue strike. Religious pilgrimages clogged highways worldwide. In the morning, she was summoned to another emergency meeting. New intelligence had arrived overnight. "Their main fleet has entered the solar system," the NASA director reported. "Thousands of vessels, approaching from multiple vectors. Their propulsion method doesn't match any known physics. We've intercepted communications between their advanced scouts," added a CIA analyst. "Our linguists are struggling, but certain patterns suggest they're cataloging us like specimens." The president stood. "I'm addressing the nation tonight. We'll announce our intention to accept their terms and begin preparations for the transition. God help us all." As Reeves left the building, a junior officer handed her a message. Dr. Ilara Chen, a quantum communications specialist she'd worked with on a classified project years ago, urgently requested a secure meeting. Something about anomalies in the hegemony's transmission. Reeves hesitated, then deleted the message. What difference could it possibly make now? Ilara hadn't slept in 53 hours when the lab fire alarms triggered. Through the haze of exhaustion, she registered only one thought: the data backup. She grabbed the quantum-encrypted drive and climbed out through the bathroom window seconds before the explosion rocked the building. From across the street, she watched flames consume 5 years of research and the only proof of her discovery. "This wasn't an accident," she muttered, clutching the drive. 3 days and 4 false identities later, she stood before an abandoned mining facility in the Namib Desert. The retinal scanner hidden behind a rusted panel recognized her despite her efforts to disguise herself. "You look terrible," Marcus said as the reinforced doors sealed behind her. "Someone tried to kill me. Welcome to the club." He led her through tunnels lined with stolen military-grade tech. "They came for me 6 months ago. Claimed I had a psychotic break. Would have been committed to a specialized facility if an old teammate hadn't warned me." In the central chamber, 3 people looked up from their workstations. Marcus made introductions. Dr. Sanjay Kapoor, former head of neural interface research at Google before his unauthorized experiments got him blacklisted. A bearded man nodded grimly. Dr. Maylin, geneticist, published a controversial paper on dormant human neural capabilities before her university mysteriously lost all funding. A severe-looking woman in her 50s gave a curt nod. "And this is Alex." A teenager with multicolored hair didn't look up from a holographic display shimmering with complex patterns. "I can see them," the teen said. "The patterns. They'd vibrate wrong." "Alex has synesthesia," Marcus explained. "Sees code as colors and shapes. Cracked 3 unbreakable government encryptions before turning 16. Then disappeared rather than work for intelligence agencies." Ilara connected her drive to their system. "The temporal inconsistencies in the hegemony transmission aren't random. They're deliberate. A pattern embedded within a pattern." "Like a subliminal message?" Dr. Lin asked. "More sophisticated. Their transmission includes quantum entanglement markers that our technology shouldn't be able to detect, let alone interpret. But they didn't account for the experimental scanner I was testing." "What did you find?" Marcus leaned forward. "Their entire communication is layered. The surface message about guided development contains embedded triggers designed to induce specific neurological responses, primarily fear and hopelessness." She pulled up her analysis. "And there's something else. References to processing centers and biological resource optimization." "They're farming us," Alex said suddenly, looking up. "The colors shift to hunger patterns when that subroutine activates." Dr. Kapoor frowned. "You need more evidence than a teenager's color perceptions, Dr. Chen." "We'll get it," Marcus said. "There's a place with records that go back centuries. The Vatican secret archives." "You can't be serious," Ilara protested. "That's one of the most secure facilities on Earth." "Officially, yes." Marcus pulled up schematics on the main screen. "But during my last mission, I discovered an unofficial access point. The Catholic Church has been documenting extraterrestrial encounters for over 400 years. Why would they hide this information now?" Dr. Lin demanded. "Because they're terrified," Marcus replied. "Their records show this isn't the hegemony's first visit to our solar system, and the previous encounters ended with harvesting." That night, as the others prepared for the Vatican infiltration, Ilara found Alex alone, staring at replays of the hegemony transmission. "What do you really see?" she asked. Alex's fingers traced patterns in the air. "They're lying, but not completely. The hegemony is afraid of something about humans. There's this vibration in their message. It's almost like..." The teenager paused. "Like they're checking if we know something. Something they don't want us to discover." "About what?" "About ourselves." The hegemony scout ship had crashed in the Atacama Desert just hours earlier. By the time government forces arrived, Marcus's team had already secured the wreckage. Inside the alien vessel, Ilara moved cautiously through curved corridors that seemed to shift subtly, as if breathing. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that responded to her proximity. "The pilot should be in the forward chamber," Marcus said through her earpiece. "Team 2 reports it's still alive but injured." Ilara's hand hovered over the neural transmitter on her belt, an experimental device Sanjay had created from their combined research. If I can establish direct interface, we might get more than language. We might get truth. The alien pilot lay sprawled across a gelatinous control interface. Its exoskeleton was cracked, leaking iridescent fluid. Multiple compound eyes swiveled weakly to track her movement. "I'm not going to hurt you," Ilara said, activating the neural transmitter. "I want to understand." The moment the connection established, her world exploded. Billions of simultaneous thoughts crashed through her consciousness, a vast hive mind stretching across space. Her nose began bleeding as her brain struggled to process the alien consciousness. She experienced fragmentary images, vast harvesting facilities processing humanoid bodies into component materials, planets stripped of resources and discarded, the slow extinction of species deemed inefficient, and something unexpected: fear. Deep ancestral fear embedded in hegemony, collective memory of beings that could disrupt their perfect unity. When she awoke 72 hours later in their Antarctic facility, her vision was permanently altered. Light now carried information patterns, visible as color distortions only she could perceive. "They broke when they found us beyond our system," she told the team, still struggling to form coherent sentences. "We weren't supposed to leave Earth yet. Too early. Not in their timeline." "You need rest," May insisted, checking Ilara's vitals. "No time." Ilara grabbed Marcus's arm. "We need to find Orpheus. He's real." Marcus went rigid. "How do you know that name?" "It was classified beyond top secret." "Saw it." "In their mind." Her speech became more fluid as she adjusted to her altered perception. Orpheus is their designation for a human who survived direct neural integration with their technology. They'd been studying him for years. 48 hours later, after a harrowing expedition through Arctic blizzards, they stood before Orpheus in an abandoned Soviet-era research station. His body was grotesquely altered, parts of his skull replaced with transparent material revealing pulsing neural tissue interfaced with alien technology. "You've come," he said, voice resonating strangely. "Finally. I've waited so long." "What did they do to you?" Marcus asked. "Improved me. Studied me. Feared me." His partly mechanical eyes focused on Ilara. "You touched their mind. You know." "I glimpsed it," she said, "but I don't understand what they fear." "Then let me show you." Orpheus gestured to a sealed chamber behind him. This facility wasn't built by Soviets. It predates human civilization. The ancient doorway opened to reveal a vast underground complex filled with technology that seemed both organic and mechanical. At its center stood a neural interface platform. "The hegemony didn't build this," Orpheus explained. "They discovered it, just as I did. But they couldn't activate it fully. Only human neural patterns can." "Why only humans?" Sanjay asked, examining the alien console with professional fascination. "Because we weren't supposed to exist yet," Ilara whispered, the pieces finally connecting. "The timeline is wrong. According to the hegemony's records, humanity shouldn't have achieved space travel for another 3,000 years. Something accelerated our evolution," Orpheus confirmed, "and that something left us a gift." He gestured to the neural interface. "A weapon against those who would harvest us." "What happens if we use it?" Marcus asked. "Either transcendence," Orpheus said, "or complete neural collapse. Are you willing to take that risk to save our species?" Node 3 in Kenya went dark at 300 hours. Node 5 in the Ural Mountains followed 18 minutes later. By sunrise, only the Antarctic facility and the secondary site beneath the Amazon rainforest remained operational. The Prometheus protocol, which had required 5 synchronized facilities just hours earlier, now depended on only 2. "They're tracking our power signatures," Marcus said, studying the holographic display showing their dwindling network. Exhaustion lined his face. He hadn't slept in days. None of them had. "We must assume the Amazon facility is already compromised," Sanjay replied, fingers dancing across multiple interfaces simultaneously. They'll delay striking it to observe our response patterns. On the medical base screens, the vital signs of their 3 latest test subjects flatlined in perfect synchronicity. Dr. Lin covered their faces with sheets, her movements mechanical after so many similar failures. 42 volunteers lost, she reported quietly. Neural pathways collapsed at the theta-gamma transition point. Alex burst into the room, hair disheveled, eyes wild with excitement. I found it. The error in the interface algorithm. The team gathered around as Alex projected a dizzying display of neural mapping patterns. We've been treating human consciousness as a unified field, but it's actually a quantum superposition of states. The ancient interface was designed for minds that maintain multiple simultaneous consciousness threads. That's not how human brains work, Sanjay objected. Not normally, Alex agreed. But certain individuals can achieve this state naturally. Artists, musicians, those with particular neurological conditions. People like me. Outside, the Antarctic storm intensified, providing additional cover from hegemony sensors. But time was running out. The countdown display showed less than 9 days until the main fleet arrived. On the global news feeds, hegemony transition specialists were conducting public demonstrations of their technology in major cities. Their elegant, towering forms moved with hypnotic grace as they displayed medical miracles, curing terminal patients, regenerating lost limbs, restoring sight to the blind. The benevolent face of enslavement, Marcus muttered, switching off the feed. A secure transmission interrupted them. Colonel Amelia Reeves, the military officer who had initially dismissed Ilara's findings. Dr. Chen, I was wrong, she said, her face haggard on the screen. I've seen their processing centers. They're being constructed inside our own military bases. She transmitted classified footage showing massive bioconversion chambers being assembled in underground hangars worldwide. Human workers moved like automatons, their eyes vacant, installing equipment designed to process their own species. What's happening to those people? Ilara asked. Neural restructuring, Reeves answered. They'd been exposed to the first phase of dampening fields. They retain basic functionality but lose all sense of self-preservation or resistance. Her voice cracked. Including my sister and her family. We need your help, Colonel, Marcus said. We have a countermeasure, but our facilities are being systematically eliminated. What do you need? A diversion. Something big enough to occupy their attention for 12 hours while we recalibrate the Prometheus protocol. Reeves's expression hardened. I have access to the nuclear launch facilities in Montana. They're not fully compromised yet. The hegemony ships can neutralize nuclear weapons, Ilara cautioned. Yes, but they'll have to reveal their defensive capabilities to do it. That will give us data on their energy signatures and temporarily drain their shields. After Reeves signed off, the team implemented Alex's revised algorithm. Instead of forcing human minds into alien patterns, they would leverage the natural chaotic structure of human thought, especially from neurologically diverse individuals. We need to broadcast a recruitment message, Ilara decided. Target artists, musicians, people with synesthesia, savants, anyone whose brain naturally processes information unconventionally. How do we reach them with all communications monitored? Sanjay asked. Marcus smiled grimly. We hide it in something the hegemony won't recognize, human creativity. He turned to Alex. Can you embed our message in music, art, and entertainment streams? Something their algorithms will miss but humans will intuitively sense. Like subliminal messaging. Alex grinned. Better. I can create patterns that will resonate only with the neural configurations we need. As they worked, Orpheus's modified voice came through their system. The Amazon facility has fallen. You are humanity's last hope. The image of the U.S. president's vacant smile, as he helped aliens harvest his chief of staff, would haunt Marcus forever. It played on repeat across their emergency broadcasts, the ultimate symbol of humanity's fall. In the Antarctic facility's command center, The team watched global brain activity measurements cascade downward on holographic displays. Billions of minds dulling simultaneously as the pacification drones spread across every continent. Tokyo just dropped below level 3 cognitive awareness, Sanjay reported, his voice clinical despite the horror. Paris and Cairo following the same pattern. At this rate, we have less than 30 hours before global neural activity reaches irreversible suppression thresholds. The teenage quantum hacker who had been their savior just days earlier now sat catatonic in the corner, staring at nothing. They'd found Alex attempting to open the airlock without a suit, the weight of imminent extinction too much to bear. Dr. Lin had administered a sedative, but the incident shook the team's already fragile morale. The Prometheus protocol is still unstable, Ilara said, her modified vision perceiving energy patterns flowing through their neural interface equipment. Even with Alex's adjustments, we're losing 80% of test subjects to complete neural collapse. Marcus slammed his fist against the console. We don't have time for perfect. The nukes launch in 6 hours, and that's our only window. Colonel Reeves's diversionary attack was humanity's last coordinated military action. 3 nuclear submarines had gone dark, their commanders refusing surrender orders. They would surface simultaneously to launch everything they had against the mothership, not expecting victory, just a momentary disruption in hegemony defenses. In the testing chamber, Dr. Lin monitored the latest volunteer, a Ukrainian violinist who had responded to their hidden call. Like the others with artistic talents, she had shown greater resilience against the neural feedback, lasting 3 minutes before convulsing. There's a pattern here, Dr. Lin called out, reviewing data from all test subjects. Musicians consistently demonstrate 43% greater stability in the neural interface. It's not just musical training. Orpheus interjected through their communication system, his partly mechanical voice distorted by interference. It's their ability to simultaneously process multiple information streams while maintaining emotional resonance. Ilara's altered perception suddenly registered a shifting pattern in the facility's power distribution. The hegemony found us. They're probing our defensive systems. Alarms blared as external sensors detected approaching craft. Their sanctuary's time had run out. In that moment of crisis, Dr. Lin made a breakthrough. It's not just the musicians, it's what they're experiencing during interface. The subjects who maintained stability the longest all reported experiencing the interface as music rather than information. Synesthesia, Ilara whispered, remembering Alex's ability to see code as colors and patterns. The interface needs to be reconfigured to translate quantum data into sensory experiences the human brain can process naturally. Marcus turned to their communications array. How many musicians can we still reach? Not enough, Sanjay said grimly. Less than 200 have responded to our hidden messages, and most are already in dampening zones. Ilara stared at the neural interface platform, its alien architecture pulsing with potential energy. We need to broadcast the interface itself, turn the protocol into a signal that any human mind with sufficient creative capacity can join intuitively. That would require a power source orders of magnitude beyond what we have, Sanjay objected. A distant rumble shook the facility as hegemony weapons began targeting their outer defenses. There is one option, Orpheus said, his tone shifting to something almost reverent. The ancient technology was designed to draw power directly from quantum dimensional boundaries. Properly aligned, it could amplify our signal across the entire planet. The alignment process would require a direct neural sacrifice, he continued. Someone must remain physically connected to the core systems during activation. They would not survive. The team fell silent as the implications became clear. I'll do it, Ilara said quietly. No, Marcus countered. Your unique perception is essential for calibrating the final signal. It has to be me. Before they could argue further, the facility shuddered under direct impact. The hegemony had begun their final assault. The temperature in the Antarctic facility dropped precipitously as hegemony weapons breached the outer defensive layers. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, sacrificing peripheral sections to preserve the core. External sensors report 15 hegemony vessels in attack formation, Sanjay announced, his breath visible in the increasingly cold air. Primary power generators compromised. Switching to contingency systems. In the adjacent medical bay, Dr. Lin prepared Marcus for the sacrifice protocol. She attached neural transmitters directly to his brain stem while avoiding his gaze. The interface will maintain your consciousness for approximately 4 minutes after biological death, she explained clinically, though her hands trembled. Use that time to complete the signal alignment. Marcus nodded, his expression serene despite the countdown to his own end. Just make sure it's not wasted. A thunderous explosion rocked the facility. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling as Ilara rushed in. We've lost contact with Colonel Reeves, she reported. The nuclear launch has been compromised. The submarines were detected. How long until the hegemony reaches the core? Marcus asked. 20 minutes at most. An alert chimed from the communication array. To everyone's surprise, it came from a civilian frequency, an incoming transmission that somehow pierced through hegemony jamming. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to an elderly Asian man, his surroundings indistinct, but clearly not a military facility. This is Wai Zong, principal cellist with the Beijing Symphony, he said, his voice calm amid distant sounds of destruction. I receive your embedded message and recognize the mathematical pattern from Bak's cello suites. The team exchanged bewildered glances. Mr. Zhang, how are you contacting us? Ilara asked. All civilian communications are blocked. Music finds a way. He smiled gently. I've modified your interface algorithm based on the mathematical structure of Bak's cello suite No. 1. The prelude's arpeggiated figuration creates a perfect neural resonance pattern. He transmitted complex equations that flowed across their screens, the same neural interface algorithm they'd been struggling with, but restructured according to musical mathematics that spanned centuries of human artistic evolution. This is brilliant, Sanjay whispered, rapidly integrating the new approach into their systems. It creates stable feedback loops using natural harmonic progressions. Zhang's transmission began breaking up. I've reached 342 other musicians worldwide. We're ready to join your network when. His image dissolved into static. A proximity alarm blared. Hegemony forces breaching level 3. The automated system announced. We have to go now, Marcus insisted, already strapped to the interface platform. With or without the submarines, Ilara calibrated the final alignment, her altered vision allowing her to perceive quantum resonance patterns invisible to others. Zhang's modifications have increased projected stability by 78%. We might actually survive this. Not all of us, Marcus reminded her softly. Their eyes met briefly, a lifetime of unspoken words compressed into a single glance. The facility shuddered as another explosion hit closer to the core. Emergency lights flickered. Secondary power failing, Sanjay reported. We have minutes at most. Dr. Lin administered the final neural accelerant to Marcus. The transmitters are online, initiating global broadcast of the interface signal. Across the planet, the musicians who had received their message, cellists in abandoned concert halls, violinists hiding in basements, pianists in remote cabins, felt a strange resonance building in their minds. Those with synesthesia saw colors blooming where no visual stimulus existed. Children with perfect pitch heard impossible harmonies. Marcus's body arched in agony as the ancient technology interfaced directly with his consciousness. Blood trickled from his eyes and ears, but his voice remained steady. Alignment at 60%, he reported through clenched teeth. Neural pathways expanding. On their monitors, thousands of points of light began appearing worldwide, minds connecting to the Prometheus protocol through the musical interface. Each connection strengthened the signal, creating a cascading network that the hegemony's dampening fields couldn't suppress. The final bulkhead protecting their core facility began to glow red as hegemony cutting tools sliced through. "They're here," Ilara whispered. "Alignment at 90%. Marcus gasped, his vital signs plummeting. "Almost. There." The bulkhead burst open, revealing hegemony soldiers, their true forms now visible without the elegant disguises they had worn for public appearances. Writhing appendages and feeding maws propelled them forward with horrifying speed. "Now!" Marcus screamed, his consciousness expanding beyond his dying body. Ilara activated the final sequence as the first alien reached for her. The signal erupted from their facility, not just data but something more fundamental. A thought form, born from millions of human minds, suddenly connected in perfect, chaotic harmony. A declaration and a weapon in one. "You've chosen your path to destruction." The hegemony soldier reaching for Ilara froze mid-motion, its compound eyes flickering with erratic patterns. A high-pitched keening sound emanated from its communication organs as the quantum disruption penetrated its neural network. Within seconds, it collapsed into convulsions, viscous fluid leaking from multiple orifices. The same scene played out across Earth wherever hegemony forces had deployed. Their perfect hive mind, once their greatest strength, became their most catastrophic vulnerability as the chaotic human thought pattern propagated through their quantum-entangled consciousness like wildfire. Ilara barely noticed. Her focus remained on Marcus, whose body had gone still on the interface platform. The monitors flatlined, but the neural activity readings continued to pulse with impossible complexity. "He's still in there," she whispered. "His consciousness is propagating through the network." Outside the facility, the attacking hegemony vessels began to behave erratically. Some fired upon each other, their targeting systems responding to phantom threats as their crews' shared consciousness fractured. Others attempted emergency dimensional jumps with partially functional navigation systems. One massive cruiser, attempting to escape the quantum infection, miscalculated its jump coordinates. The resulting spatial distortion manifested as a blindingly bright tear in reality above Antarctica. The implosion generated gravitational waves that instantly vaporized 3 other ships and created tsunami warnings across the southern hemisphere. In orbit, the hegemony mothership initiated emergency protocols, severing its quantum connections to the infected fleet. The massive vessel shuddered as contradictory commands flooded its systems. Sections of the ship went dark, while others blazed with uncontrolled energy discharge. Dr. Lin monitored the global situation from their surviving terminals. Pacification drones are failing worldwide. Neural dampening fields collapsing. Reports flooded in from scattered resistance cells. Humans awakening from cognitive suppression, often violently and disoriented. In Paris, thousands simultaneously collapsed as their brains struggled to process the sudden removal of dampening effects. In Sao Paulo, the awakened turned on hegemony processing centers, with whatever weapons they could find. On their primary display, a visualization of the Prometheus signal showed it propagating beyond Earth, following hegemony communication channels to distant outposts and fleet concentrations. Like a quantum contagion, it spread faster than light, carried by the very technology designed to control countless worlds. "We need to get to the surface," Sanjay urged, helping Ilara stand. She had collapsed moments after the signal launched, blood streaming from her nose and ears. "This facility won't hold much longer." The survivors gathered what equipment they could carry. No one suggested removing Marcus's body from the interface. All understood he was no longer there in any conventional sense. As they made their way through damaged corridors toward the emergency exit tunnels, they encountered more hegemony soldiers. Unlike the first wave, these moved erratically, some attacking each other, others standing motionless or engaging in bizarre repetitive movements. "Their hive mind is fragmenting," Ilara observed, her altered perception allowing her to see the chaotic energy patterns coursing through the aliens. They're experiencing individuality for the first time in their evolutionary history. One alien officer, apparently more resistant to the quantum disruption, aimed a weapon at their group. Before it could fire, its own subordinates turned on it, tearing it apart in a frenzy of uncoordinated violence. The hierarchy is collapsing, Sanjay theorized as they hurried past. Without the central consciousness to direct them, their implanted social structure falls apart. When they finally reached the surface, they emerged into an Antarctic dawn unlike any Earth had witnessed before. The sky swirled with aurora-like energy patterns, aftereffects of the dimensional rift. In orbit, visible even in daylight, the Hegemony mothership burned like a second sun as cascading system failures triggered antimatter containment breaches. Dr. Lin's tablet chimed with an incoming transmission. The signal was weak but unmistakable. Colonel Reeves, speaking from what remained of a military bunker in Montana. "Chen, are you receiving? What the hell did you people do?" Her voice contained equal parts awe and horror. "It's happening everywhere. The Hegemony ships are. They're destroying themselves. But God help us, the cost." The transmission cut to a panoramic view of Denver, where the city had stood hours before, a smoldering crater now stretched for miles. Collateral damage from a Hegemony vessel's catastrophic dimensional drive failure. "We hurt them," Ilara said, watching the burning mothership. "But victory will mean nothing if we can't control the aftermath." The Phoenix's maiden voyage departure ceremony took place in what had once been Sydney Harbor, now rebuilt around the massive shipyard constructed from repurposed Hegemony technology. Unlike the utilitarian military vessels of pre-contact Earth, the dimensional jump ship resembled a living sculpture, iridescent hull materials that responded to neural commands, organic-looking propulsion systems that bent space rather than pushing against it. Marcus would have appreciated the irony, Ilara thought. Humanity's savior hadn't lived to see what his sacrifice had wrought, yet his consciousness had somehow imprinted on the quantum technologies they now wielded. Navigator Aisha Rahman, one of the children who had spontaneously developed telepathic abilities during the Prometheus event, approached Ilara on the observation deck. At 12 years old, she was the youngest crew member of the Phoenix mission, yet possessed greater understanding of dimensionally phased navigation than any adult. "Dr. Chen, the dimensional anchor is calibrated for Procyon B," Aisha reported. "The Liberation Fleet will follow our jump signature once we establish the safe corridor." Ilara nodded, her specially designed optical implants allowing her to perceive the ship's quantum readiness state. The permanent changes to her vision had become an advantage in humanity's rapid technological renaissance. "Have the cultural integration specialists completed their preparations?" she asked. "Yes. Wei Zhang is leading the first contact team," Aisha replied. "The cellist believes music will provide the optimal translation medium between human thought patterns and the enslaved Procyon species." The cooperative had discovered that the Procyons had been among the first worlds harvested by the Hegemony. 50,000 years of servitude had nearly eliminated their cultural identity, but archaeological evidence suggested they too had once possessed unusual neural structures. Below on the loading deck, the elderly cellist supervised the movement of ancient instruments recovered from a Hegemony storage facility, musical artifacts collected from conquered worlds, and preserved as anthropological curiosities. The Hegemony had never understood the power contained in these expressions of creativity, seeing them merely as behavioral anomalies to be cataloged. Captain Reeves, newly promoted after her role in coordinating Earth's post-contact recovery, approached Ilara at the railing. "The last supply shuttles are docking now," she reported. "We launch in 2 hours." The physical scars on Reeves's face from her final battle against Hegemony forces in North America had become a common sight among survivors. Few had emerged from the conflict unmarked, either physically or mentally. The shared trauma had become part of humanity's new identity, a price paid for freedom and understanding. "You still sure about this mission structure?" Reeves asked, lowering her voice. "Sending musicians and artists as our frontline representatives seems." "Exactly right," Ilara finished for her. "The Procyons were chosen for harvesting because of their neural structure, similar enough to ours that they might respond to the same liberation technique that saved us." She gestured toward Earth below, where the landscape showed both devastation and renewal. The glittering domes of the neural rehabilitation centers stood alongside ruins and construction sites. 40 million dead, yet humanity had emerged not broken but transformed. In Jakarta, a massive memorial pulsed with bioluminescence, each light representing a life lost during the hegemony's brief occupation. In orbit, the cooperative's defense platforms maintained vigilance, though the remnants of the hegemony had retreated to their core systems, their once perfect unified consciousness shattered beyond repair. "We go as healers, not conquerors," Ilara continued. "That's what separates us from them." The ship's neural alert system, modeled after the Prometheus protocol but refined for everyday use, signaled the final boarding call. In the ceremonial chamber at the heart of the Phoenix, the young telepaths gathered with the musicians. The neural network they created would guide the ship safely through dimensional space, their unique consciousness serving as both navigator and protector. A holographic image of Marcus flickered briefly in the chamber, not a true consciousness, but an echo preserved in the quantum structures he had merged with. These manifestations appeared unpredictably across Earth's new technologies, as if some essential element of his being had become interwoven with the systems he died to create. As the Phoenix prepared to depart, Waijan began to play, the same back cello suite that had once provided the mathematical key to humanity's salvation. The melody carried through the ship's living systems, and for a moment, Ilara felt Marcus's presence beside her, completing a circle that had begun with desperation and ended with hope. The dimensional drives engage, creating a corridor through realities that no human vessel had traversed before. As Earth disappeared from view, replaced by the incomprehensible beauty of dimensional transit, Jung's music continued, a human voice speaking across the cosmos, carrying not a signal of destruction, but of liberation.